Let's take a look at some examples to see where some ambiguity can come in when we're looking at our participial phrases or our modifiers. So, while watching a baseball game, a ball or bat could fly at you at any time, so keep your head up. So we've got this opening participial phrase, while watching a baseball game, but notice the issue. The issue is what comes after this phrase is not who is watching the baseball game. It's a ball or a bat. So notice a ball or a bat is not watching the baseball game, of course, literally. It's you who are watching the baseball game. So if we wanted to fix this, there's a lot of ways to do it. What we would have to do is put you right after that opener. So while watching a baseball game, you should keep an eye out for a bat or ball, which could fly at you at any time, something like that. The point is, you have to make sure that what follows that phrase, that modifier, is the thing doing that action. Let's look at another example. Born in 1906 on Long Island, many people would come to love the beautiful music of Billy Bob. So again, we've got this opening modifier, this opening participial phrase, born in 1906 on Long Island. Who was born in 1906 on Long Island? It's Billy Bob, right? So Billy Bob would have to follow that, not many people. So how would we write the sentence? One correction would be born in 1906 on Long Island, Billy Bob would come to be loved by many people, whatever. Point is, you'd have to make sure that Billy Bob would be right up front. Wearing the uniform of a police officer, many people were tricked by the deceptive thief. Same kind of situation here. Who is wearing the uniform? It's probably, would make sense, the deceptive thief. That's how he tricks people. So you could say something like, wearing the uniform of a police officer, the deceptive thief tricked many people. Perfectly fine. So this would be an example. Well, actually, no, we're going to do this last one. Looking out the window, a car that Jake didn't recognize pulled into his driveway. So here, what or who is looking out the window? Is it the car? No, it's Jake. So we would have to put Jake following this phrase and then complete the sentence. So looking out the window, Jake saw a car he didn't recognize pull into his driveway. Something like that. When you've got these opening modifiers, you have to make sure that they are not misplaced. So these are called misplaced modifiers. You have to make sure that they directly modify the noun that follows, that makes logical sense. Now, the thing is, our brains are really good at filling in the gaps so that when we read these sentences, we may not notice anything wrong because we get the sense of what the sentence is trying to say. We understand the context, so we got to fill in the gaps. But on the SAT, they're really strict about it. So you got to make sure that it properly modifies what it modifies. This one is related to what we've seen. It's just a little bit different. So finally understanding what he meant by his cryptic warning, lightning flashed and the skies rumbled. Not only is it the case that lightning is not the thing that's understanding what he meant by his cryptic warning. That doesn't make sense literally. There's actually no noun in the sentence that could refer to, right? So I would have to not only move the sentence around, I would have to add, let's say, I in the sentence immediately following that modifier, right? So finally understanding what he meant by his cryptic warning, I became scared as lightning flashed, blah, 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 right? So you would need to have a noun that could refer to. And this is very similar to the misplaced modifier. We call this one a little bit different. It's called a dangling modifier because basically there's nothing at all that this phrase could refer to. So it just kind of dangles there, hangs there. Whereas here, there is something it can refer to. It's just referring to the wrong thing in the sentence. Minor difference. I sometimes use them interchangeably, though there is a difference between them, of course. Just be aware in all cases, this opening modifier has got to describe the noun that comes right after it. Here's some more examples which are different in structure, but they're still misplaced modifiers. I found my keys walking down the street. So literally, what is this saying? It's saying that the keys are walking down the street, which of course doesn't make sense. If I wanted to fix this, I could move this up front and say, walking down the street, comma, I found my keys. That would be fine. You could say while walking down the street, as I walked down the street, all different ways. You just got to make it clear that it's I who's walking down the street. Or if you remember from our participial phrases video, I could just put a comma there. I found my keys, comma, walking down the street. That's a little bit awkward actually, but I guess grammatically it would work, because when you put that comma there, you're signaling to the reader that that refers to the subject, not to the keys. Without the comma, it's literally referring to the keys, but you add the comma in and it shifts the meaning, the focus to the first word, the first noun in the sentence. I followed the thief into the cave, trying to not make a sound. So here we've got an ambiguity. First things first, is it I trying not to make a sound as I follow the thief into the cave? Probably. Or is the thief who is trying not to make a sound and I followed him as he was trying not to make a sound? Or literally, is it the cave not trying to make a sound? Very confusing, right? It's ambiguous. It really could be any of those three. So what you would have to do is fix this sentence to make it clear who was trying not to make a sound. So let's say it was I. If it were I can move it to the front, right? Trying to not make a sound. I follow the thief, blah, blah, blah. Get rid of that too, I guess. That would be one way to fix it. You could, if it were the thief, you could put it right after the thief. I followed the thief, trying to not make a sound, into the cave. A little bit weird, but I guess you could do that. The point is you got to make sure that these modifiers are unambiguous, that they clearly refer to one noun in the sentence. My job is to entertain children dressed in a clown costume. So again, literally it's saying that the children are dressed in the clown costume when clearly it should be I. But this is kind of a dangling modifier because I don't have any I in the sentence that could be dressed in the clown costume. All I have is my job. So I would have to change this to be something like, I spend my days entertaining children. Well, that would still be a problem. Basically, there's a lot of ways to fix this. The main thing, all you need to know, we don't have to supply a correction for this because on the real test, they will give us corrections. But the main thing just to realize for this is that this has got to be unambiguous. It's got to be clear who is dressed in the costume. So you could say something like, I dress in a clown costume in order to entertain children for my job, or something, right? A lot of ways to fix it. You just have to make it clear who's doing what. Let's try the next one. Trainers should use clickers to work with their dogs, a device that signals correct behavior when the clicker is pressed. So we've got one major issue here that I want to focus on, which is this phrase, a device that signals correct behavior. We can just essentially ignore this for now. This has got its own problems, but I'm actually just going to eliminate that from the sentence to focus actually on the core of this. We're going to get into a video on this later, but this is called an appositive phrase. It's a special kind of phrase that basically defines or emphasizes something in the previous sentence. And here it's defining what a clicker is. A clicker is a device that signals correct behavior. The issue is that it seems to be kind of modifying or describing the dogs because, again, proximity matters. This follows directly after the dogs. It's unclear. Like, best reading of this, it's unclear that this is referring to the clickers. Worst case scenario, it's ambiguous. It seems like it's referring to the dogs, that the dogs are a device, which doesn't make any sense. So again, we would probably want to move this closer to the clickers. So something like trainers should, when working with dogs, trainers should use clickers, comma, a device that signals correct behavior, blah, 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 blah. So again, take that modifier, make sure it is clear what it's referring to. Last one, the scientist defended his theory from his colleagues, which tries to explain the movement of the planets in galaxy XYZ. So we'll talk more about these as well later. This is called a relative clause, starting with which. And when you have one of these relative clauses, this has got to refer, again, to the previous noun. And here, it's not the colleagues that try to explain the movement of the planets. It's the theory that tries to explain the movements of the planets. So either we take this whole phrase and we move it after the theory, or we rearrange the opening sentence so that theory is right next to this phrase, so to this clause. So something like, the scientist talked with his colleagues and defended his theory, comma, which tries to explain the movement of the planets in galaxy XYZ. That would be a correction among many. So finally, participial phrases and other modifiers, remember that, to sum up, generally apply to the noun they're closest to. So always look out for ambiguity or for vagueness or for anything that's simply unclear. Try to make it clear what that phrase, that modifier, whether it's a participial phrase or something else, is referring to. So let's look at an example from the test number 1. Having become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems, no colleagues were nearby to share ideas. So notice this is actually a dangling modifier. Might be hard to see at first, but it's basically like that thunder and lightning question we saw before. Having become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems. Who is doing this action? In the context of the passage, it's I. I have become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems. And notice in the following sentence, there is no I anywhere. In fact, it's saying that no colleagues were the ones having become frustrated, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't make any sense. So this is actually a dangling modifier. We need to introduce a subject into this sentence that relates back to it, and the only one that does that is D. D adds the I back in, just like we saw before. We did this actually with the thunder and lightning example. We added I back in. It doesn't have to be I, it just happened to be I in these two cases. The point is the dangling modifier refers to that first noun, so make sure it's clear and unambiguous. So this one is D.